Hello friends, and welcome back to our channel. Today I wanted to do another homeschooling in high school video for y'all. This is a video that in looking over my playlist I realized was probably something that was missing from my homeschooling in high school playlist. So today we're going to be going over a checklist or timeline for homeschooled high schoolers who are college bound. Golden things. If your student went to public school or private school, they would probably have a guidance counselor to help them out and know some of these things that we're going to be talking about today. But in homeschooling, a lot of times we don't have access to that. So we're going to be thinking about some things year by year that you can do to help your student be ready for college. The first time that I'm going to talk about is before 9th grade. So what are some things that you should do before 9th grade for your college-bound student? This is the best time for you to determine the graduation requirements for your state. I've talked about this many times on my channel, and it's just super important for you to know that the graduation requirements from homeschool for high school students. Now, a lot of you have reached out and told me that your state really doesn't have any requirements, that you're going to be able to make the requirements for graduation in your homeschool and that kind of thing. And that's fine too. But if that is the case, then you definitely need to look at college entrance requirements and make sure that you are at least meeting that. Even for students that are going to be homeschooling in accordance with their state's graduation requirements, that is a minimum standard. And for kids that are college bound, we want to make sure that we go a step beyond that and we look at some schools in our area and make sure that whatever those schools are asking for in terms of freshman admission requirements, that we're meeting that. So minimum high school graduation requirements do not always equal what is required to gain admittance to college. What I recommend is going online and searching for freshman admission requirements for some local colleges. I live in South Carolina. I used the University of South Carolina. I also selected several other colleges and kind of compared, and they were all very similar. I would highly recommend that you do that in your area. So if your student has somewhere that they know that they want to go, then obviously that's going to be a great school to check. But you also want to check some other schools, a public school, a public university, state university, and maybe a few others as well, just to make sure that you are on the right track in terms of credits. Just to give you an idea, in South Carolina, 24 credits are required for high school graduation. And those credits are broken down as follows. And I'm going to read this to you because I don't have it memorized, but I will try to pop it up on the screen as well. 4 English credits, 4 math credits, including Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry, and a 4th higher level math course. So that could be like trigonometry, pre-calculus, statistics, etc. 3 science credits with at least 2 lab courses. 3 history credits, which must include 1 credit in American history, 1/2 credit in government, 1/2 credit in economics, and 1 additional history or social studies credit. 1 credit for physical education, 1 credit for computer science, 2 foreign language credits in the same language, 1 fine arts credit, and then 5 electives. So that is the minimum requirement for high school graduation in the state of South Carolina. So obviously I looked at that and wanted to make sure that we met that criteria for Katie when she was in high school. However, like I said, we also want to go a step beyond that and look at what colleges are requiring. So when I did the research for college admission requirements, I did find that in my state, yes, all of that was required, but in addition, they also wanted to make sure that 1 of the English credits was British literature and 1 was American literature. And they also wanted to make sure that incoming freshmen had 3 lab credits. So the minimum graduation requirement is to have 3 science credits, 2 of them with a lab. But the minimum college entrance requirements for the schools that I looked up were that all 3 of the science credits were lab classes. So that was also a difference. So definitely make sure that you look at that, and that needs to be done prior to high school. If your student is already in high school and you haven't done that, just do that as quickly as you can so that you have time to correct anything that is that you've missed. So once we obtain this information, the next thing that we can do before high school starts is to go ahead and make a plan for how you're going to do these credits. And the other thing that you need to do is keep track of grades, course descriptions, book lists, etc. for any high school classes that were taken in middle school that will need to go on the high school transcript. So now let's talk about the 4 years of high school and what needs to be accomplished during those years for college-bound students. So in 9th grade, we need to create a document for tracking volunteer hours, as well as jobs that your student is doing or activities that they participate in, because very frequently when you look at scholarships, a lot of times they will ask about this. So especially volunteer hours are important, but we also want to keep track of the other things. So you could just simply keep like a spreadsheet and keep this throughout your high school years and just keep updating that as needed. You also want to go ahead and develop your transcript and make sure that you're keeping track of all the credits and GPA and all that kind of stuff for your high school student. The 9th grade, if not before, I also recommend working on study skills with your student. If you feel like that's a weak area, make sure that they know how to take notes. Hopefully this would have been handled in middle school, but if not, 9th grade is the ideal time to go ahead and make sure that they understand how to take notes and understand how to study. Because that is a learned skill, and that is something that will serve them well as they start taking classes that are much harder, if they potentially go into dual enrollment classes, and then as they ultimately move on to college. In the 9th grade, make sure that your student has the writing skills that they will need. So they should be able at this point to do a research paper for science or history, where they can use a bibliography and make sure that they can cite sources, they understand plagiarism. Also make sure that they can do a 5-paragraph essay talking about literature and that kind of thing. And if you feel like you have any weak areas at this point, now would be a great time to fill those gaps. So you might look into a writing specific program such as IEW, the Lost Tools of Writing, or you may want to look at a program like The Good and the Beautiful that encompasses writing within the language arts. But make sure that your student is able to write. It doesn't necessarily have to be their best subject or their favorite subject, but make sure that it's a skill that they do have. Along those lines, also, you need to make sure that they know how to write a lab report, and make sure that in science they are doing formal written lab reports for at least some of the labs that they are doing. I will pop up here on a screen a really good resource that we used for learning how to do lab reports. In the 2nd semester of 9th grade, this is when you want to start thinking about the PSAT that will be taken in 10th grade. The PSAT is important because it starts them understanding how to take standardized tests, particularly if you've never had your student do any standardized tests. The PSAT is also important because there's an opportunity there for scholarships if your student does very, very well. So you want to make sure that they have an opportunity to try, for those scholarships. So you want to go ahead and start studying. I recommend in 2nd semester, go ahead and add that in as a subject for them. You can use Khan Academy, which is free, and go ahead and develop a study plan for the PSAT. Another thing that you could consider in the 9th grade, and this is purely optional, but is something to consider, and that is joining the National Homeschool Honor Society. So that is something that you could add to, their applications as they apply to college. If your student has the necessary requirements for that, that might be something to think about, and I will link their information in the description box below. Now let's move on to 10th grade. So in 10th grade, we want to do a lot of the things we've already been doing: keeping up with grades, keeping up with the transcript, keeping up with credits and documentation of everything that we're doing. But we also want to focus on the PSAT. It's very important to register for the PSAT at the beginning of 10th grade, as early as possible. So I recommend calling them like as soon as they're back in the office when school is beginning. You're going to register with either a local public school or private school, and so you're going to need to make sure that there's room for your student, because they can cap it off, and they can also say that outsiders can't come and take the test. So you want to make sure that you have the ability to find somewhere else if you are unable to find a spot at maybe your closest local school. So that is something that I recommend doing at the beginning of August or middle of August. Go ahead and call the schools in your area where, like where would you prefer for them to take it? Call that one first, and if that doesn't work, then call the next school on your list. But go ahead and get them registered to take the PSAT. So the PSAT, you call the local schools, and hopefully get them registered that way. For the SAT, you're actually going to register online. So we need to make sure that we do that in August, because the PSAT is offered in October. It's usually like in the middle of October, and you want to make sure that you get on a list for that. Once your student takes the PSAT and they receive their scores back, then you want to go ahead and take those PSAT scores, go to Khan Academy, and you can actually link your scores in Khan Academy, and it will create a customized study program for you for the SAT. So I highly recommend that. We did that with Katie, and that was very, very helpful, and is also free. So at this point, you can begin studying for the SAT, which they will take in the 11th grade. The 10th grade is a great year to consider career choices and opportunities, what your student might be interested in, as well as what colleges they might be interested in and what major that they might be interested in, to go ahead and start having those conversations. If your student plans to dual enroll, this will usually happen in the 11th and 12th grade year. Sometimes you can do dual enrollment earlier, but usually it's going to be in the 11th and 12th grade years, or 11th or 12th grade. You don't have to do it every year, but that's when you usually will do it. A lot of times you will have to apply to do dual enrollment. So you'll need to be looking at schools if this is something that you want to do. Find out what the costs are, and a lot of times they do require that you submit a PSAT score. And the reason why they do this, and also a transcript, and the reason why they do this is because they want to make sure that your student has high enough grades and PSAT scores where they feel like that your student would be successful taking college classes while they're still in high school. So if your student wants to do dual enrollment in 11th grade, then the time to register will be the spring of the 10th grade year. So that is when we need to start making sure that we're getting all those things lined up for dual enrollment. Even if you're just doing one class in 11th grade, you would be registering in the 10th grade year in the spring. All right, in the 11th grade, we want to keep up with documentation of credits, GPA, all the transcript information, any of the activities, jobs, and volunteer activities that your student is doing. Keep up with tracking that information. You also need to make sure that your student takes the SAT at least once. You can take it, there's numerous opportunities to take the SAT every year. Katie took it, I believe, in March of her 11th grade year, and our plan was if she needed to take it again, then we would take it again in June. So she would take it in March and then take it again in June. We chose for her not to take it again. We just didn't really feel like she needed to do it again. But you want to take it in 11th grade, because if your student, if they have test anxiety or they didn't perform well, they feel like they need to take it again, taking it in March of the 11th grade year really is going to give at least 2, if not 3 more opportunities to take the SAT. So you could do it in June. You can also do it in the beginning of the senior year. Once you take the SAT and you get your SAT scores back, again, go back to Khan Academy and develop a comprehensive study plan for taking the SAT again if you are choosing to have your student take the SAT again. Apply online to take the SAT, you go to a college board, and you will also need to have information about colleges where you want to have those scores sent. And you'll want to go ahead and set that up if you know already where you plan to apply. Even if it's multiple schools, you can go in and have those scores sent to those colleges directly. The other thing that you need to think about in 11th grade is graduation. How are you going to do your transcript or how are you going to do a diploma? Is there a graduation that you can attend for high schoolers in your area, maybe through a co-op? Or if not, are you going to potentially maybe just do a celebration or party for your student as a way of marking that milestone? Another thing to do in 11th grade is to start thinking about colleges. Hopefully at this point, your student has narrowed it down to just a handful or less of colleges, and start planning on which colleges you want to apply. This is also a really good time, either the spring semester of junior year or over that summer or early in the senior year, to take trips and visit the colleges that they're interested in as they narrow down that list and begin to think about applying for college. The other thing we need to do in 11th grade during the spring semester is if your student is doing dual enrollment, this would be the time to apply for dual enrollment for 12th grade. Or if they have already been doing dual enrollment, they may not have to formally apply again, but just simply register for classes for the fall semester of 12th grade. So, and the other big important thing for 11th grade is to make sure that the transcript is up to date, because remember that when the student applies to colleges, the 11th grade, end of 11th grade transcript is the one that they are probably going to be seeing. That it's going to be up to date with grades, because you will be applying to college before the end of the first semester of the senior year. So the transcript needs to be robust at that point. The college will also receive a final transcript from you, but that will be after they are already accepted to college. And finally, we have made it to the 12th grade. We obviously need to continue keeping up with the volunteer hours, the credits, GPA, keep the transcript up to date, activities and jobs and things like that we may need for scholarship applications. This is a good time, if necessary, to take the SAT again. If you need to do that, go ahead and get that, registered for a spot to take the SAT. In the first semester, you're going to go ahead and have your student apply to colleges, whichever colleges they want to apply to, and so that there may be some essays to write, there may be things like that they need to do. Each college is going to open their application at a certain point, and then they're going to have early decisions made at a certain point, and there will be time where you can apply later on, but generally you want to apply as early as possible, hoping to get an early decision. That worked great for Katie. She only applied to one school, and she did get an early decision because she applied pretty much as soon as the application process was open. Another thing that we need to do in the first semester of 12th grade is to fill out the FAFSA form. Now that is the financial aid form. It's a government form. If you just Google search FAFSA, complete FAFSA application, you'll easily find that. But the FAFSA needs to be completed even if you don't intend for your student to receive financial aid, because most colleges will use your FAFSA application to help in determining if they are eligible for certain scholarships. So most colleges will require that you complete that and fill that out, regardless of whether you plan to accept financial aid. The FAFSA application opens in October, and you really need to find out the exact date and fill it out as soon as possible, especially in the 12th grade as an incoming freshman, because colleges will go ahead and start awarding different aid as well as scholarships based on those FAFSA applications. So you don't want to be like a latecomer to that. You want to fill it out as early as possible. That's really important. Another thing that you can start thinking about at the same time as you're completing the FAFSA, you can start looking into potential scholarships that might apply to your student. So for instance, there may be some state scholarships that you have. South Carolina has certain scholarships that are made on the basis of the GPA and the SAT scores. And so look into things like that, as well as there are other websites where you could go in and you can apply for different scholarships. Also, the universities that your student is looking to potentially attend, they will also have, they'll have ideas on how to apply for scholarships, and they'll also have internal scholarships that are done through the school itself or through like local organizations that are where the school is working through these groups, and they will be telling you how to apply for those things. So do your research on scholarships in your area, and I'll put some links to some websites where you can look at information related to scholarships as well in the description box below. I'll also put a link to the FAFSA application in the description box below. Another thing to think about in the senior year is consider if you want to do senior pictures and how you want to do that. Do you want to do it very formally and hire a photographer? Katie did not want to do that, so we just did our own pictures. But we had to decide, what did she want to wear? She did wear her cap and gown, and then she had another dress that she wore. And we had to figure out, like when did we want to do it? Where did we want to take them and all that kind of stuff. And if you're going to be using a photographer and maybe going to a certain location to do that, that's probably something that you need to go ahead and get on your calendar. You need to make sure in the 12th grade that all of your credits will be done by the end of the year, and definitely at the beginning of the 12th grade, really take a hard look at the transcript, go back, check colleges, check your graduation requirements, make sure nothing has changed, and make sure that you are on track for your student to graduate at the end of the year. In the 12th grade, we also need to plan the graduation. How will your student graduate? Is there some way for them to graduate locally through a homeschool co-op? Or are you going to plan something else, some sort of event or party for them? anything like that, now is the time to go ahead and get those plans together. At the end of the senior year, you're also going to need to complete the transcript as well as the diploma. And the last thing that you will do as a homeschool mom is forward the final transcript to the college where your student has been accepted. Before they're able to officially begin at the school, they'll need a final transcript, and they'll use that final transcript for several things. One, they'll want to make sure that your student is a high school graduate, that they have all the credits so that they can be admitted to the college. The second thing that they'll do is they'll look at the grades and the GPA, and they'll use that towards scholarship. If there's any scholarships available, they will use that final transcript to make sure that if anything was offered, do you still meet the requirements, or is there anything else they potentially might offer. So that final transcript is very important, and usually the college will let you know how to submit that and when they need it. All right, so that's everything I could think of off the top of my head, the things that we went through and did. We, like I said in my last video, we have an accountability group in South Carolina that keeps us on track. So we were very, very fortunate to have that. I know a lot of y'all don't have very much regulation in your states, which is good, but I think it also can maybe cause confusion if you don't really know exactly what to do or how to get things done. So I thought that this video might be helpful for some of y'all in terms of creating sort of a checklist of things to do during high school to make sure that your student is ready for college. If you've graduated students or you have students in high school and you can think of anything that I left off, definitely let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts on this and your input. If you have any other questions about homeschooling in high school or video ideas, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for being here today, friend. We'll see you next time. Bye. Golden, I follow.